Alright, look, there are times in the review game where you do a video because you need to put the content out for the algorithm, or you feel like it's a figure or something that people are going to be interested in, and then there's other times like this where I cannot wait to make the video. So as well as getting the ever-loving cantankerous KUP in this release, you also get these two G.I.JOEs. They're allegedly different guys. They must have met at a military mustache enthusiast convention. We got Sergeant Slaughter and Leatherneck. So I've probably said this before, but I have never been a G.I.JOE guy. I've always thought their proportions make them look a little bit like Thunderbirds. I don't know, they just give off such unironic Team America energy. These two guys in particular, I'm sure this is going to be an incredibly unpopular opinion, but also, if nothing else, I do like them in the context of having their awesome vehicles, which, as far as I can tell, the cool vehicles and playsets did a lot of the heavy lifting with this toy line. But having, you know, Transformers having always had cockpits, it's really nice to have figures to actually utilize their alt mode a little bit more. Man, the playability. The playability! And that's why thematically I feel like it makes the most sense to start in vehicle mode. America, America, G.I.JOE! Look at this. How could anyone not love this? It is ridiculous. It is like toyetic poetry and Cold War fever at its absolute finest. What a redundant vehicle. It is so big, it seems, in my opinion, relatively underarmed. It is not offering a lot of driver protection for what is a tank, essentially. Like, no canopy, no nothing. And, if you look real close, it seems like the entire thing is controlled by a joystick. But it's branded. See? Sergeant Slaughter. United States. USA, baby. Also, I know what you're thinking. Two figures, one seat. What kind of lunar module inspired military mayhem machine is this? Take a look around the back. They've provided storage for some of your ordnance. Right, there's clearly no room in the cockpit, so you can chuck, you know, your buddy's gun and backpack there, and there's even a handy slot for your inexplicably strange riding crop accessory. But there is a secret computer platform. That's right, because this was the 80s, all of this space, I assume, was taken up by giant computers. You'd have to imagine, right, that this computer terminal now is, what, about an iPhone 4's worth of computing power? But regardless, once that's down, you can get your buddy Leatherneck to come on in, and he can be Mr. Computer Operations. He's got a handy peg, several pegs in fact, for wherever you want to put his feet. I'll be real though, he's got the energy of someone who in high school would have beaten kids up and put them in a locker for even knowing the word computer. I mean, I love this for so many reasons, but it just screams taxpayer funded with no oversight. This vehicle is the manifestation of, alright, we better spend this year's budget, otherwise they'll cut our budget for the next year. For a size comparison in vehicle mode, let's get him in here alongside Soundwave the Dreadnought. I don't know, I think that's what it was called. I think it's fair to say that KUP has the defensive power in these alt modes to match Soundwave's offensive power. I mean, if you're Sergeant Slaughter, you're gonna have to change your name to Sergeant Slaughtered, because not a lot of protection in the Triple T, as it turns out. Vehicle, fine. Driver, less so. Especially when I can't imagine, even with a joystick as controls, that it's the most maneuverable mother sucker to ever hit the roads. And by way of a final size comparison, here he is with a bunch of puffers. Pipes. But not pipes. So the transformation on this sloppy jalopy is pretty straightforward, but not without nuance. So you first de-arm it, which doesn't take very long. Flip out these pieces, pull those apart, come around, untab this on both sides, fold the whole thing out. Unpeg these arms from the inside, pull this section down, bring these bad boys out the way for now, take the front of the tread, fold it back. The legs, then fold it around back on themselves. Fold these bits away, flick out those feet. You got yourself a stew going. This front section, you're then going to want to spin around to reveal those robo abs and tuck these pieces down inside. This whole section can then collapse in on itself. With the lower half done, we can then come around, get these arms, fold them up. They're on a double hinge. We're going to come up here, fold that piece forward, fold this secondary flap up. This whole back section will then collapse down, and you've got these two slots there that'll correspond to these two tabs here. Peg that in quite securely. Twist the arms around, and these clips are going to hook over this section here in a way that I must admit is a bit scary. You really got to make sure that you've double folded that hinge properly. It does have a little bit of a snappable feeling to it. This chest will then tab in to those shoulder pieces and all lock together quite tightly. These back pieces, you're kind of going to want to rotate them around on themselves, right, before you eventually fold them up, and they just have a friction tab. And there you have the ever-loving Sergeant KUP. To store those weapons, if you come around the back, take those missiles, tab them onto the inside, and the same deal with those blasters. They've got a port there, and they can lock in on his back. Makes them all peep nicely over his shoulders. So look, I can understand if you've dipped into this line before, being a little underwhelmed by the entries we've got so far. And if you've already got KUP, then you know exactly what I'm talking about in terms of him setting the new gold standard for what they can actually do with this line. Like, not only is he awesome in his own right, but he's so good that he makes all the others seem weaker by comparison. And so that's why I feel it's most pertinent to start with said comparison. So firstly, proportion wise, right, sculpt wise, he looks the most like what you think of as that character. He just looks like KUP in a different fit, which essentially is what changing alt mode is, right? So like if we get him in alongside, say, Bumblebee, you can see only thing that makes this Bumblebee is his head. Otherwise, it is a really random, generic-y, janky-looking, horrible robot that can barely move because it gets in its own way to such an egregious degree that it makes me question whether I even like Transformers. And from the back, it's not even immediately apparent that Bumblebee's even a robot. The main reason I wanted to get him in shot is because I want to take his gun. Because it's a cool gun, he doesn't deserve it, KUP does. Honestly, the difference between the sense of effort that went into these two, you really wouldn't even think they're part of the same line. You know, whilst conceptually, I still really like this Megatron, and on shelf, he's undeniably cool just to gaze upon, but seeing what they've done with KUP, his fusion cannon sticking out of the back of his hand is just unforgivable. And then when you look at the quality, Megatron has that Marzipan Man feel, where you're like, this is soft, this is cheap. I feel like this was done cheaply. Whereas KUP, on the other hand, has that plastic quality that when you get it in hand, you're just like, yeah, that's nice. Also, KUP manages to achieve this robot mode without having any parts forming at all. Like, we all know that backpacks are a thing and that we've had to make our peace with backpacks because, you know, the vehicle mode pieces, they gotta go somewhere. On KUP, with the way that all transforms, folds around and twists, is so much more elegant than Megatron just having half a HISS tank on his shoulders. Like he's backpacking through Europe. You know, he doesn't have the hand feel to match up to his shelf appeal. I must admit, I do still love that head sculpt. And then we've got Soundwave, who I had thought was a huge step in the right direction. Like, yes, kibbly, some dimensions awkward, but it's really clearly that character. They managed to maintain, like, pretty well all of his color scheme. Big chunks of kibble, but quite free articulation and quite posable. But his posability is nothing compared to KUP. Nothing! Soundwave's still missing a waist swivel, no ankle tilts. A step in the right direction, but final form of this subline? I think not. KUP's articulation, on the other hand, is great even for a mainline figure, and in some ways surpasses a mainline figure. Ball jointed head, cool, great, look around. But then from transformation, he can go real far down, and perhaps a smidgen further back than what you're accustomed to. But that's what you want from these figures, right? It's like Titan Class. He needs to be able to look down at the bros he's hanging out with. Great upward range out of those arms. They can go all the way around. You have to cheat it a little bit to avoid the backpack, but that's fine. Past 90 on the elbows. Bicep swivel nice and low, which is like the placement I like the most. Wrist swivel, then from transformation, they can fold in. Completely unimpeded waist swivel. Universal at the hip. Great range forward and back. Thigh swivel. I'd call that probably 90 out of the knee. There's a lot going on there, but they've been pretty considerate in the sculpting to make sure that you can get right down where you need to. Then what's really a game changer for this subline is KUP actually has ankle tilt. Not just ankle tilt, but also a bit of toe. Again from transformation, but it's there. So he can throw all the kind of cobra attacking, deceptor destroying shapes that you really want him to. In terms of accessories for him to rock and roll with while he's in robot mode, they've given you these to use as his guns. But I don't know about you, I hate that. I hate that so much. It's just not cool. Just isn't. There's 2 of them, so you can obviously do it twice, but it's such an uncool feature that I'm not even going to bother showing it. If you saw how lame one gun looked, let's just double down on that lameness. But if your collection is anything like mine, I assume you have a tub somewhere that's just jam full of unclaimed ordnance, waiting for a resourceful fellow like KUP to come past and claim some. So weapons aside, another big play feature with this line is obviously how they team up with their G.I.JOE partners in a phenomenon that many would call a human alliance? Dusty! So far there's been a bit of a running theme with a big chunk of vehicle mode sat on the back where the Joes can ride the Transformers like Falcor. Looking at the first 3, Megatron does the best job, but at what cost?
Everything.
Well, a big-ass backpack. KUP, on the other hand, like in all things so far, handles this a little differently. KUP's GIJOE integration makes great use of that hidden computer panel, so you don't have to have a huge, weird section hanging out. You can tuck it away when you're not using it. It transforms, if you will. I'm not sure what Sergeant Slaughter's actually going to be able to do from back there, but at least as a feature, it's not as intrusive as it is on some of the others, and feels much more deliberate than it does on some of the others. I will say it's a little cozy when you got all 3 of them there. So look, I can wholeheartedly appreciate how people might have had mixed feelings about this line up until now, but the whole concept is just so toyetic and hits me right in the collector feels in one of those ways where it makes you feel like a kid again. Like, can't you just see the toy commercial?
New from Hasbro, Transformers X G.I.JOE. When you add Cobra and the Decepticons, that equals bad news for the Autobots.
Oh no, Bumblebee's been captured.
Not for long, when Triple T KUP rolls in with Sergeant Slaughter, capable of carrying 2 Joes and transforming in 18 simple steps.
Oh, look out, KUP, it's Ravage.
They're no match for Sergeant Slaughter. Not on my watch, Zartan. You and your little dog, too.
Oh, look out.
Don't forget about me. In my day, we respected our elders.
Soundwave superior.
You've done it, you've saved Bumblebee.
KUP and Slaughter saved the day again. Go, Joe!
Sergeant Slaughter and the Triple T KUP available at all good toy outlets. Other figures and vehicles sold separately.
And that's the end of that chapter. Another one of KUP's war stories locked away for another day. What are we thinking? You gonna get him? You got him? You love him? I do. This is definitely a step in the right direction for this line. But this is cool. I mean, despite still having no real interest myself in G.I.JOE as a toy line to collect, I will keep buying as many of these as they want to put out, because even though it's not my bag, I get it. I get how G.I.JOE could very much be your bag. Thank you so much for watching. Like and subscribe if you haven't, because that stuff super helps. If you have, way to go, you little legend. I want to know what you think. Hit me up in the comments below. Let's get nerdy with it. Sound off.